Today we'll be working in my workbook called Esther, and it's on the complete book of Esther. This is one of my most favorite books to teach, and it's a really, really very good book. We have already completed, looking at the table of contents, maybe, come on, there you go. We've already completed chapter 1, which sets up the problem. Queen Vashti is dethroned. That is when King Xerxes was really drunk after 6 months and 7 days of a banquet. He asks his queen to come to the banquet of men dressed in a royal crown, and many scholars believe, and nothing else. But even if she was to wear her dresses, it still was not appropriate for a woman to be in that banquet. It was demeaning. The only women that were in the banquet of men would be the servants and the dancing girls. So this was really demeaning to a woman of noble character, whether she was naked or not. So Queen Vashti refused, and you never refuse the king during this time. So he met with his seven nobles of wise men, and they decided that they were going to issue a decree that Queen Vashti could never be in front of the king and that she would lose her royal position of queen. It would probably mean that she would then be put back in the harem because there was a harem of women, and she probably would never be seen again because the only person that could see her would be the king. So, men, that is. Um, and that decree was issued throughout the provinces of 127 provinces because the men were worried that the women would start saying no to whatever they asked for. So that's the reason why that happened. So now we're in chapter 2, and Esther becomes queen. Esther 2, 1 through 23. Later, when King Xerxes' fury had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what he had decreed about her. So later, when he wasn't drunk, he realized that he has no queen to come to his bedside. He just has his harem, which is fine, but no one that he can, that's his queen. What had King Xerxes, why had King Xerxes been mad? Because Queen Vashti had said no to him, to her being displaying herself in the banquet of men. What did King Xerxes decree about Queen Vashti? That she could no longer go in front of his presence and she lost her royal position of queen. So he has no queen right now. Could King Xerxes have reversed the law now that he thought better of it? No, he cannot. Even a king cannot reverse the law of Medes and the Persians. When King Xerxes remembered Vashti and what he decreed about her, do you think he regretted it? Why or why not? Yes, I think he regretted it. He had decreed that he could never see her again. She was very beautiful. She is not his queen. Obviously, he had picked her as a queen in his harem because she was special, and so now he has no special woman that he can go see. Can't go see her. So, so yeah, he regretted it. Then the king's personal attendants proposed, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king, and virgins would mean any woman not married. Let the man let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful women into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Then let them be placed under the care of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. So basically, um, there will be commissioners in every province gathering up all the single women that are beautiful and bringing them to the king to be part of his harem. So the definition of a harem is a lodging of wives and concubines of the king or person of royalty. King David and King Solomon would have had a harem, and they had fairly large harems. Definition of a eunuch, a man who guards the woman's living quarters or harem of a king or person of royalty. Now, let's talk about the harem a little bit. You could really, really like being part of the harem or really, really not like being part of the harem. The good things about being part of a harem is that you always you always have food and a place to live and you know clothes to wear and you're taken care of. But it's a gilded cage because you can never go out, see any men other than the king, only if the king asks you to come. And you basically live the rest of your life in company of other women and all the situation provides. You may never go out, other than if there's a courtyard inside the harem. Your life is spent inside this um, building facility of women. And it can be good. It depends on where you come from. But you definitely are not going to get married. You're never going to see another man. This is your life of being just at the king's command. But someone would prefer it because their life would have been hard labor, and this is leisure and a roof over your head, food to eat, and good clothes. So it depends on what your life was planning as to how this looks. But of course, it'd be young women that have never been married before. So most of them have never had a relationship with a man before. Then the eunuchs who guard the women would be not able to have children, not able to have sex. So they were then in charge of the women because the thought was if you couldn't have sex, you couldn't, I mean, you were less of a man and therefore couldn't be loved. We now know, obviously, that that's not true. You can be quite loved even if you could never have any sexual relations. But anyway, so that's definition of harem and eunuch. What did King Xerxes' attendants propose? Let's have a beauty pageant. Let's search for all the beautiful young virgins. They will be treated beautifully. They'll present themselves in front of you, and then you can decide which one you want your queen to be. But the rest of them are in your harem, so you got them all anyway. Who took care of King Xerxes' harem? Haggai. What would be given to the virgins brought into the harem? Um, Beauty treatments. What would the women who pleased King Xerxes become? His queen. Now, there was in the citadel of Susa, and this is happening in the citadel of Susa, a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai, son of Jar, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish. And Kish was the one who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive when Jehoiachin, king of Judah. Okay. So if you were ever to look at those waves of captivity, there were about three of them. And so that's why they're identifying the particular one when Jehoiachin was taken. The story of Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, to be taken captive is written in 2 Kings 14 through 16. A family tree was very, very important to the Jews. Yes, it was important to the Jews. It was critical to be able to trace your family line back to one of the original sons of Jacob. What tribe does Mordecai belong to? The tribe of Benjamin. Okay. Who is Mordecai's father? Jair, grandfather Shimei, and great grandfather Kish. Which ancestor of Mordecai's was carried away into exile? Kish. Who took Jehoiachin captive? Nebuchadnezzar. Where was this king who took Jehoiachin from? Babylon. If these men had their sons at the average age of 30, how many years has this family been in captivity? So the about 60 years, because Kish would have been 30 when Shimei was born. So we're ignored Kish. Shimei was 30, Jar was so 60 years, which corresponds relatively good with the years of captivity. Okay. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. So Hadassah was her Jewish name, Esther was her Persian name. And most people had two names. Even in the New Testament, they have two names, Paul and Saul. The name Esther was a Persian name. What was her Jewish name? Hadassah. What is Esther's family relationship to Mordecai? He is her uncle. Based on the relationship shown on 2, this would mean that Esther's mother's father or father's father would also be whom? Um, okay, so looking back at um, Mordecai's um, lineage, he was son of Jer. So her father would have been brother to Jer, and they both had a grandfather, Shimei, or basically mother's father or father's father was Shimei. So this means Esther is also part of what tribe? Benjamin. Why did Mordecai raise Esther? Because she had neither father nor mother. They both had died. What physical description do we have of Esther? She had a lovely figure and was beautiful. That's odd. Gotta fix that. When the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Haggai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the harem. So she was swept up in this sweep of virgins. And so she's a Jewish young lady who swept up into the palace. Do you think the palace is Jewish? Absolutely not. Persian customs. And nobody in that area, and other than other women who might have been swept up, are also Jewish. So she is now a young lady, maybe 15, who is swept up into a whole, very similar to what Daniel went through when he and his friends were swept up, but he had at least friends that were swept up as well. Why were the young women brought to the citadel of Susa? Remember, they were all swept up to be part of this beauty pageant, but either way, they're going to be part of the harem. So she will never have a life as a Jew again after this. We know that the commissioners went to all the 127 provinces of King Xerxes' realm to find the women. Where did they find Esther? Right in the citadel of Susa, right outside the gates. What was Haggai in charge of? All the virgins of the harem. So those had never been seeing the king. We will find that out later, but he handles the harem. What is a harem again? A home or a place where all the wives of the king or a royal person lived. And this was actually used in many ways to prevent war. We see that in David and Solomon's case, where to prevent war, they married one of the daughters of an opposing king. So that was used to prevent war as well. How do you think Esther felt when she was picked up and brought to the harem? Not very good. You know, she's being pulled out of everybody she knows into a kingdom that does not have any Jewish traditions or customs, and she's all alone, basically. She pleased. Okay, I see what you're. And where the harem can. Okay, so we got that. So she pleased Haggai and won his favor. Immediately, he provided her with her beauty treatments and special foods. He assigned to her 7 female attendants selected from the king's palace and moved her and her attendants in the best place in the harem. So she already had won the favor of Haggai. Now, you wonder how that was done, but we can say without a doubt that she didn't do it sexually. So it would have been her innocence and her demeanor and these things that did that, because obviously, if A, he couldn't have sex, and B, that wouldn't be a proper Jewish girl, and we have the impression that she was a proper Jewish girl. Um, who did Esther please? Haggai. Haggai provided Esther with many special things. You can name them. Let's see. Um, beauty treatments and special food, 7 female attendants, and she got the best place in the harem. How do you think Esther pleased Haggai more so than any other women? We had just talked about this. It would not be sexually, it would not be any of that kind of thing. We know her to be a proper Jewish girl. So her demeanor, because think of what would happen as women were caught up in this. Some would be nervous and scared. Some would be thinking that they have spoiled and conceited. There are many varieties of characteristics here that he's going to have to deal with. But for some reason, she stood out above all the rest. Maybe she was calm. Maybe she believed in God enough to be at rest and not fear. I don't know. But somehow she stood up above all the rest as far as her characteristic and demeanor. How many attendants in Haggai provide Esther? Seven. Yeah, seven is throughout the book for some reason. Esther had not revealed her nationality, Jewish, and family background of being related to Mordecai because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. It's very important, actually, to the storyline. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. So, what we will discover is that Mordecai is part of the the nobles or whatever of the kingdom, because he has access, uh, more access than just a normal person would. So um, he he is able to walk back and forth near the courtyard to find out anything about Esther, how she was doing in these things. But he had forbid her say that she was Jewish or that she was related to him. What did Mordecai not want Esther to do? Tell her nationality or who she's related to. What is Esther's nationality? She's Jewish. Who's the only family member of Esther we know is Mordecai. Why do you think Mordecai did not want Esther to reveal her nationality or family background? Her nationality first, because a lot of people did not like the Jews. So that protected her. And her relationship to Mordecai, because he is part of the kingdom. And he didn't want neither special treatment nor derogatory treatment because of who she was related to. What did Mordecai do every day? He walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how she was doing. And number six is because of that. I mean, answer six is because he wanted to know what was happening to her. What do you think Mordecai felt about Esther being part of King Xerxes' harem? He did not like it. He is upset. This beautiful Jewish girl he is raised proper in the Jewish customs, he will never see again or be able to share her life again. No, no Jewish husband for her. No Jewish children coming from her. Devastating, devastating. Before a young woman's turn came to go into King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments prescribed for the women, 6 months with the oil of myrrh, and six with perfumes and cosmetics. Oil of myrrh was used on the skin for many reasons. It was used as a perfume. It was also used as a medicine to cure various skin diseases and as a lotion to reduce wrinkles and scars. It also helped internally with digestive problems and colds. It's still used today. How many months did each woman get beauty treatments prior to meeting the king? 12 months. How many months were the women treated with oil of myrrh? 6 months. And how many months were treated with perfumes and cosmetics? 6 months. So basically, they're going to learn how to, their skin is going to be soft and without blemish, and they will have learned or done their makeup properly. And so they'll be learning a lot of skills before they meet the king. What are some of the reasons that oil of myrrh was used? Um, Perfume, medicine to cure various skin diseases, lotion to reduce wrinkles and scars, and also internally to handle digestive problems. Is oil of myrrh still used today? Yes. And this is how she would go to the king. Anything she wanted was given to her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening, she would go there, and in the morning, return to another part of the harem, the care of Shah. I've always had a problem with this. Shashgaz. Shashgaz. Let's go that way. The king's eunuch who was in charge of the concubines. She would not return to the king unless he was pleased with her and summoned her by name. When it was the woman's turn to see King Xerxes, she had one choice that was all her own. What was it? Whatever she wanted to take with her from the harem when she went in to see the king. After she'd been with the king, she would now be considered a concubine. Who would be in charge of her now? Shashgaz. And basically, whether he had relations to her or not, because she had spent the night in the king's room, she was considered then no longer a virgin, but a concubine of his, and she would be in the harem and basically would not be called out until he calls her again. How would she see the king again? Only if he summoned her by name. When the turn came for Esther, the young woman Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Who was Esther's father and Mordecai's uncle? Abihail. How did Esther decide what to bring with her when she met the king? Whatever Haggai suggested would be what she was going to bring in with her, which we don't know what it is. What month did Esther go to see the king? 10th month. When the prior queen, Queen Vashti, was dethroned, it was the 3rd year of King Xerxes' reign. Now it's the 7th year of his reign. How long did King Xerxes not have a queen? 4 years. Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. The king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. So he decides to pick Esther as his queen. Does he know that she's Jewish? No. Does she know who she's related to? No. When the virgins were assembled the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. But Esther had kept secret of her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do, for she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. So now the virgins are assembled a second time. We don't really know, however, they could be assembled for her banquet. And Mordecai sitting at the king's gate is usually where he sits. I don't know why he decides that's a great place for himself to sit, but that's his usual location. Esther has still been quiet about who she's related to and her Jewish background. And this is where this is going to come into play, this story. There's no explanation of why the virgins were assembled a second time. This could mean that King Xerxes continued to increase his harem, or the rest of the virgins were moved to the concubine side of the harem, or that the women were assembled for Esther's banquet. Again, we don't know why. What 3 things did King Xerxes do after he made Esther his new queen? We'll have to look back here. He set a royal crown on her, gave a great banquet, and he proclaimed a holiday and gave out gifts. Where was Mordecai sitting during the second assembly of the women? At the king's gate. Had Esther told of her family background and nationality when she became queen? No, absolutely not. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. Why were they angry? We don't know. Maybe that the lady that they had in the beauty pageant didn't win. We don't know. What did Mordecai hear while he sat at the king's gate? That there was going to be there was a plot to assassinate the king. What is the profession of Bigthana and Teresh? They are the king's officers who guarded the doorway. Why was Bigthana and Teresh at the king's gate? Because they were guarding the doorway. Based on the fact that Mordecai forbid Esther to tell of her family connections, do you know Big Thana and do you think Big Thana and Teresh knew that Mordecai had direct access to the new queen? No, absolutely not. What we do not really know why these two men are angry with the king. What do you think caused them to be angry? Could be anything. I was just thinking that if it's the queen's banquet we're talking about, that their special ladies did not get to be a queen, or the ladies that they wanted to marry were now the kings and they couldn't marry them. There's always obviously a lot of women who were already in love with someone or commissioned to someone who's been taken up in this harem. Quite a lot of problems with this. So you could easily see many issues where Big Thana and Teresh could have wanted the king to be killed. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles or hanged, depending on which version you're reading. All this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. So, okay, so he found the plot. Now, how does he able to access Queen Esther? Men are not normally able to access um, the women, but she perhaps with other people around her or whatever was able to have this happen where he comes often to talk to her. Um, so the two officials, Big Than and Teresh, were impaled on poles or hanged, depending on your translation. Now, this is recorded in the book of Annals of the Presence of a King. So these are the king's chronicles, much like our own chronicles that are listed in the Bible, listings of things that happened during the time of the kings. Who did Mordecai tell of the assassination plot? Esther. Who did Esther tell of the assassination plot? The king. So she had access to the king at that point. Who did Esther credit for this information? Mordecai. What happened to Big Thana and Teresh? They were impaled on poles. Where was this event recorded? In the annals of the presence, in the presence of the king, which is very important to the storyline here. In the scripture, do you see anything written about Mordecai being rewarded for discovering the plot? No, but God has a plan. So we come to the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed the rising of the plot here. Esther's book is, you can almost see it in drama form. Of course, there's been many movies made of the Book of Esther, but it's a great read as well. So anyway, let's go ahead and do the crossword. And I always like to have the answers next to me in case I don't want to lead you astray. What year of King Xerxes' reign did Esther go to see him? 7th year. What is Esther's Hebrew name? Hadassah. 5. What is Esther's father's name? Abihail. 6. What is the name of Esther's cousin? Mordecai. 1 down. Who was in charge of the part of the harem of the young virgins? Haggai. Who was in charge of the part of the harem of the concubines? Shashgazaz, or something like that. How many months of beauty treatments were the women given before they saw the king? 12. So that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoy this book. It's one of the best books there is. And I hope to see you soon. Bye now.